إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. You are most welcome to Islam and Science on MTA International Africa. Today in a program, we are continuing our discussions on genetics and heredity. We want to understand further what is responsible for how we look, what do we take from our parents and grandparents and generations before us, and what would we pass on in terms of our features, physical features, to our children and grandchildren. To help us understand this topic, we have Mualim Abdul Ghafoor Said, a missionary of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community here in Ghana, and Dr. Kobna Ejopon Osman of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, a pediatrician for that matter. Doctor, you are most welcome. Thank you. Salam. Yes, so to set the ball rolling, Dr. Saib, we often look to a newborn child to see which of the parents that the child looks like, isn't it? Yes. It's very common in Africa. When they invite you to an outdoor, and the first thing you want to see is who is the child looking like? Okay. So broadly speaking, we want to understand this concept. What is heredity?
So heredity is the passing of characteristics from a parent to an offspring. You know, the parent both have certain sets of traits, and these traits are passed on to the child. So the traits express itself physically, but not only just the physical traits, they even have the mental traits as well that is carried on to the offspring. So by this, the child, like you said, will look, maybe the nose will look like the father. Interestingly, maybe the mouth will look like the mother. Yes, it can happen that way. Okay. The child can also have a perfect face of the father, then have the mother's color. All this is possible because of heredity, that some characteristics are passed on from the parents to the offspring.
Okay, so what determines what we take in from our parents, or what we pass on to our offspring?
So what we call the genes is what determines what we take from our parents, and the mother brings a set of genes, then the father also brings a set of genes. And in expressing itself, sometimes one gene, even though both brought some, one gene can be dominant than the other. Sometimes in some characteristics too, both of them share the same dominance. We call it codominance in producing the characteristics.
Okay. Yes. Mualim, doctor is telling us that genes are responsible for what we take on and what we pass on from our parents and on to our offsprings. Does Islam support this idea?
Of course. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Yes, of course, Islam supports such idea, because the idea originated from Islam, and it's only been emphasized by the scientists of today and even the scientists of yesterday. What he says is nothing very different from what we have in our Holy Quran, because that is always our source of guidance, both in our worldly and spiritual affairs. Allah says in Surah Ar-Rum, that's chapter 30 of the Holy Quran, verse 12, that Allahu yabda'ul khalqa thumma yu'iduhu ثُمَّ إِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. And the translation is that Allah originates creation, then He repeats it, then to Him shall you be brought back. Have you seen what Doctor have said is exactly in total what Allah have said? Allah originates it. That is, we're talking of the parents. Then He repeats that same thing. The repetition could be just immediate family or generations before, but the repetition has come. So He will go inside to talk about the genes and other things. We are not up to that genes level. We know that the physical human being, you keep changing, and your changing doesn't go out the circle of the family, your ancestral chain. So that is what we know as people who learn the Holy Quran. So scientists are there to build upon it and tell us more as to what and what happens and these changes come about.
So if I understand you well, it means that this repetition
Yes.
that you're talking about is the continuation of the physical features or
Yes.
characteristics that we find in a certain line. Is that right?
I don't think it's only about the physical features.
Okay.
Yes, it's the human being, the makeup of a human being. It is what Allah is talking about. You see, the creation of man, Allah says in one of the verses that some we know not.
Okay.
So those we don't know now are where we know up to is where we'll be talking about.
Okay.
So those who come after us or even during our time to make any additions to it will also speak to where their level of knowledge will get to. So it is not only about your physical appearance. You can speak and someone who lived longer than you can tell you that this is how your grandfather used to speak. But it's a repetition of your makeup that Allah has brought about in the ancestral lane that you came from.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Saib, this understanding of heredity, how long has it been in the body of science? How recent is it?
Well, there has been, studies into the characteristics of man, but it came out more clearly about like 200 years ago during the time of Darwin and Mendel, Mendel. Around that time is when they started to notice some features, Gregor Mendel especially noticed some features in plants that were, he thought they were being passed on from one plant to other. Darwin also did some studies and noticed some of these features being passed on from one animal to the other. So it's not been something that has been documented for a long time, but in recent time, in the last 100 years, when there are sophisticated machines, now we know more about what we call the genes, and we know those are responsible for transmitting the characteristics that each individual may have from their parents. Okay. It has even gone to the extent that like they can trace your lineage from your genetic material. They can tell you, okay, we know typically like the African Americans now, some of them can, through genetic studies, they can tell them, okay, your ancestors were brought from this part of Africa, because the genes has gone through all these centuries and they can trace it exactly so. So this conforms to what Mualim Sahib was saying, that Allah created and has been repeating it, and it goes through a lineage that is unmistakable, that it can be traced perfectly.
It means that what we're seeing cannot be by chance at all. Otherwise, then at a point it should break.
Yes, yes. I don't think it can be by chance. If it were by chance, then like what we're able to, the way we're able to trace those who grandparents were, great-great-grandparents were taken here more than 500 years ago. By that time, you are right, with the mixing of genes and everything, maybe it might have lost along the line, and we cannot trace them anymore. So it's not by chance. It's really specifically designed that such traits will be carried on from one generation to the other.
Just to add to what Dr. is saying, that shows that it is not a manly design, but a divine design. Because whatever man does, there's always mistakes in it. But when it is divine and it is solely the responsibility of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just as he said, he creates and repeats. He has no mistakes, and he doesn't make mistakes. So with that, you always see that there is conformity with whatever research that they will get to find out. That's why they are able to trace these people with the link, because that creation has been repeated over and over again with the same formula that was created by Allah. If that was not by a divine hand, you can't trace these things. You see, it goes on to elaborate a point or a verse that Allah has spoken about long ago, before today, that He has created. He said, "O mankind, we have created you from a male and a female, and we have made you into tribes and sub-tribes, that you may recognize one another." So the recognition of one another is what is playing role today, that African Americans are tracing, calling it homecoming. You see, in Ghana, just last year, we received a lot of people who were saying their ancestors came from year of return, and they came home after that long time, because that repetition of the creation that Allah said with respect to who we are, it is what is happening and what is throwing light on us today. So it is not something new to Islam. Islam is already aware of it and told us earlier before that this is what is going to happen to mankind. So if we are able to recognize it and appreciate it today, the credit goes to the Holy Quran. Yes.
That's good. Dr. Saib, from what he's saying, if we're able to do all these tracing from hundreds of years, in fact, the year of return, we're saying 500 years, or is it 400 years? After the slave trade was abolished, you know, and people are able to now trace back to their origins. You know, that presupposes that the division into tribe and sub-tribes that he's talking about must be by some definite factors that go on repeating themselves without missing any point. Otherwise, then we would not be able to do this, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. So all that comes from what we call the genes. The genes are materials that they are embedded in also what we call the chromosomes, and they are the basic units of material that produces the traits that we have. They've been designed such a way that they pass on, one from the mother, one from the father, and they build up the characteristics that we have. They've been built such a way that they go on without missing any step. So that is why it makes it possible for us to trace such people way back. Because if right now they try to look at my genetic material, and maybe I had a relative maybe long time ago, 300 years ago, who went to America, and they take the person's also genetic material, they can compare and say, okay, this A is mapping to A for you, A is mapping to A for this person, and they can tell exactly that this is this person. I have a relationship with the person. The same way goes even the way we look for paternity. We do paternity tests. Yes, because they take the child's genetic material. They take the father's genetic and they can match, they can tell you 99.9% this child belongs to the father. I mean, if it was by chance, maybe you can say that along the line some genetic materials will be missing. Then when you match it, you will get maybe 60%, and you'll be in doubt. Okay, is this child, could this child be from another person? But because of the genetic material and the way it has been designed to be passed on from generation to generation, it doesn't get missed, and it doesn't happen out of chance.
That's great. I think it would be good for us to look at the mental or non-physical features as well in our subsequent programs on this topic. But for now, the environment that we grow in, doesn't it have any effect on the topic we are discussing? Your relative from US, though you might match, but your features might not look that much alike.
Yes, so we know that the environment also plays a role in the way we express our genes, what we call the phenotype, and the way we express our genes. So even though, for instance, if you have two twins who were born here in Ghana, but after that one was taken to Europe or some Western country, after some time, their physical features may look different. One, because of the environment they are, the weather, the food they eat, and everything. So even though we may have the same genetic material, the expression of it can be different due to the environment that we are in. That we know in science that it happens.
Okay, mashallah. Walim, he is mentioning certain features of the environment that could have an impact on how these physical features manifested. And he mentioned food in particular. Do we know for sure in Islam that even though you can get this repetition that the Quran mentioned about from your parents or great-grandparents, the environment you grow in could also have an effect on you?
Yeah, I will just go back to a book that was written by the second Khalifa of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. That is Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, who happens also to be the promised son of the promised Messiah. Alayhi salatu wasalam. That is Ways of the Seekers.
Ways of the Seekers.
Yes. There he has dealt with this topic properly with respect to the food and what it does to the human body, where he categorized these things, that people who eat a lot of meat, for example, cow meat or goat meat, their approach to things, and people who eat fish, how they behave, and people who eat only green, vegetables, how they also behave. So he advised you mix all so that you'll be moderate. So you won't be in any of the extremes. So he does not just say this for the purposes of writing the book, but he says it to build a community that will have people that have hearts for one another. Because the food you eat affects your behavior, your temperament, how you approach things and how you receive things. It comes from how the diet you have. So it is not in a way sweeping away what doctor says, but it comes to conform and tells us that yes, food has a greater effect in the way we live. The Prophet ﷺ, who is the Messiah and Mahdi of this age, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad ﷺ wrote a book entitled, the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community.
Yes.
He wrote a book entitled Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam. There he has emphatically elaborated the effects of the foods we eat on our bodies and our behaviors. Or even goes to our temperaments. How somebody become happy, angered, and all that. He has mentioned all these things in this book for our understanding. So it is not just per chance. It is the design of Allah. So if you take it and you put it properly into use, then you have a good result from it.
So I believe in this book he would have indicated how each type of food, or however you categorize it,
Very
could
well.
have an impact?
It's all well stated. Yes, how meat
Okay.
affects you when you are someone who is carnivorous. Let me use that word.
Okay.
You are too much addicted to meat or
Yes.
attracted to meat.
Yes.
And someone who is very
How
much
different
attracted to
you will be from somebody.
someone who eats only vegetables.
Okay.
And someone who eats only fish, rather than taking this cow and other things.
Yeah.
How you also react to issues and receive issues.
Yeah.
They are very different.
Okay.
Yes, because those that eat the cow meat, they are very temperamental compared to those that eat the fish and the vegetables.
Okay.
So the advice he gave is don't be stick to one. Mix them so that you'll be a balanced person and not one-way person.
Dr. Saib, to conclude, is this advice scientific or he's...
Yes, it's very scientific.
Okay.
Even though we are talking about hereditary,
Yes,
here,
yes.
we know that when you eat a balanced diet, that is where you get all the nutrients that you need for the body to function well. I mean, the genes that we've said, they are there to perform certain function for you. So the expression of those genes comes in the form of producing proteins, different types of proteins for the body, and not just protein, other chemicals too. All those proteins and chemicals need all the various groups that we eat to form well. So if you stick to just one type of food, like let's say just vegetables, you deprive the body of using other nutrients that it needs to function well. So this really is in conformity with what science have advised, what we call balanced diet.
Okay, mashallah. Jazakumullah for your time and contributions to Islam and science. We are very grateful. Mualim, we are very grateful for your time. And as we have seen in this program, we seen that heredity is not by chance, but is by design. And that design has been perfectly laid out by the master creator, the one who have created everything, including you and I. And science have confirmed that what that master creator is saying in the Holy Quran is indeed very scientific. But today we've been talking about our physical features. What about the non-physical features? Our characters, how we laugh, how we smile. Are these part of heredity? If they are, what is the scientific explanation of how we come about with characters, how we inherit them or do not inherit them from our parents? And does Islam support any of these? We would explore these topics more in our next episode of Islam and Science. Keep watching MTA Africa. May God bless you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.